Hi, I'm Gary, the Traveling Yogi. Thanks for joining me today. Today's practice is going to focus on the hips. It's going to be a short practice, maybe 20 minutes or so. We're going to target the hip joints as well as the muscles that regulate those joints. Let's begin on our back. So lay down. Once you're on your back, pick your knees up off the mat, bringing the knees towards the chest. You can bring your arms out to a T a little bit to create some steadiness in the pose. Now we're going to make circles in the sky with our knees. So bring the knees towards the chest and then over to the right or left, doesn't matter which direction, and then forward towards the front of your mat and then over to the other side, minus to the left. And go around about 3 or 4 times. Nice big circles with the knees. And then once you've gone around a few times one direction, pause and then go back the other direction. Try and keep the knees touching on the inside. And one more time around. Then bring the knees back to center. Then bring the soles of the feet together. And bring the pinky toe side of the feet to the mat. Now let your knees come apart until you feel a stretch on the outer part of the hips, and then bring the knees together, soles of the feet to the mat. And do that a second time. Bring the knees apart, soles of the feet come together. This pose is called Tabata Kanasa. Feel that stretch at the outside of the hips, and then bring the knees back together. One more time. Knees come apart, soles of the feet press together. Then bring the knees back together. Now bring the soles of the feet to the mat. And bring your hands back down by your side. Walk your feet back so that your heels are pretty close to your glutes. And see if you can brush your heels with your fingertips. This is bridge position. And when you're ready, press your feet into the mat and lift your hips up till you feel a stretch on the front of the hips. And then exhale and let the hips come down. Do that again. Pressing the feet into the mat, lifting the hips, and then exhale and bring the hands, or the hips rather, down. Do that again. Press the feet into the mat, lift the hips, and bring them down. Let's do it twice more. Lifting the hips, and bring them down. And last one. And then bring the hips down. Now I want you to reach your arms up and overhead and take opposite elbows, reaching the elbows towards the back of your mat. Try and keep the back of the shoulders on the mat, and now lift the hips. We're going to do that again 5 times. Lift the hips and bring them down. And again, lift the hips and bring them down. 3 more times. Lifting the hips, keep reaching the elbows forward and down. And twice more. Lifting the hips, pressing the feet into the mat. If you find your knees coming apart, bring them back together so they're about hip width apart. Last time, lifting the hips and exhale and bring it down. You can release your hands now by your side. Bring the soles of the feet back together, back to inverted Cobbler pose. Now what I'd like you to do is to press the pinky toe side of the feet into the mat enough that you can lift your tailbone up off the mat, just slightly. Try and squeeze the glutes together as you do that, and then exhale and bring the tailbone down. Do that a second time. Press the pinky toe side of the feet into the mat, lifting the hips, and exhale and bring it down. And again, pressing the pinky toe side of the feet into the mat, squeeze the glutes together, and bring the tailbone down, and twice more. Lifting the hips, and bringing the tailbone down. Last one. Lift the hips up and bring them down. Now bring the knees back together and bring the left ankle to the right knee. And I want you to keep your right foot, the sole of the right foot, on the mat. And then press your left knee away, just using the strength of the leg. You're probably going to feel a stretch on the top, the outer part of that left thigh. And press the knee away a little bit more. And then let it go. Bring the sole of the left foot to the mat and bring the right ankle to the left knee. And then press that right knee away. Did I say left knee? I meant right knee. Press the right knee away. And let it go. Back to center. Now bring yourself up to a seat. Once you're up, find Sukhasana, easy pose, just a cross-legged position, whatever one works for you. Now breathe in deeply and feel your sitting bones rooted in the mat. So feel the sitting bones pressing down. Now draw your navel in so your spine is lengthening, and then bring your awareness to whatever sensations you find in the hips, either the inner part, the groin, or the outer part. Take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, twist and bring the left hand to the right knee, right hand down behind you. Now draw your navel to the right, twisting from the navel, and then come back to center. Over to the other side, right hand to the knee, left hand down behind you, press down on the sitting bones, and draw your navel in and then over to the left. And back to center. We're going to go over to the other side and draw the navel back to the right. And back to center, and right hand to left knee, draw the navel in and then pull the navel back to the left, and back to center. One more time on each side. To the right, and then off to the left. Keep your awareness, keep your attention on the hips, those joints, the muscles surrounding the hips, and then back to center. Now uncross your legs and bring the feet so they're a little bit wider than hip width apart, and the toes are wider, farther apart rather than the heels. And then come up into a yoga squat, Malasana. For this pose, if you're able to, I'd like you to bring your elbows to the inside of the knees. Notice my elbows are just pressing to the inside of the knees. And bring your palms together. And the more you bring your palms towards your chest, the more the knees move apart from one another. Don't be afraid to move your feet. Okay? Now find a comfortable spot and then press your tailbone down so the spine is lengthening. We're not rounding, we're not slouching like that. The chin is in a nice neutral position and the whole spine is nice and long. Now this is one of the most wonderful poses. It's one of my very favorite for hip opening, because we're letting gravity do a lot of the work. I'm feeling that in the whole hip joint on both sides, both the outer part of the hip as well as the inner part of the thigh. And the more that I lengthen my spine and the more I let my tailbone press down, with most of the weight in the heels, the deeper the sensations become, at least for me, in this pose. Let's find just a couple more breaths. Breathing into the hips, that is bringing your awareness, your attention to the hips. Notice how they feel in the pose. And now we're going to intensify the sensation a little bit. Bring your right hand down to the floor, spread the fingers wide, and press the palm and the fingertips into the mat off to the right side. And now reach the left hand off to the left, about 180 degrees from the right hand. And now we're going to find a half bind. Bring the left hand behind you. If you can, connect it to the right hand behind your back and capture that right leg. And now bring weight back into that left foot. So the natural tendency is to bring the weight over in the right foot. I want you to bring weight back in the left foot and then open your left shoulder up and look up to the left. Whoa, deep, deep sensation, deep stretch in the hip on the right side. One more breath. You're doing great. And release it. Bring the hands back to center. Center yourself in the pose, Malasana, a yoga squat. And then release the left hand down. Press it into the floor or the mat and reach the right hand off, about 180 degrees. Now bring the right hand behind you and capture the hand so that you find that half bind. Now you've probably brought most of the weight over into the left foot. I want you to bring it back into the right foot so the weight is evenly distributed. And now look up to the right and open the right shoulder a little bit more. Do you feel that sensation in the left side of the hip? Or in the left hip, not just the left side. That whole hip on the left side. One more breath. Good work. Come back to center, back to Malasana. Take a deep breath. And let it go. Do that again. Deep breath. And let the breath go. Now come to all fours in table pose. And make sure your hands are right under your shoulders and your knees are under your hips. Elbows are nice and straight. Now pick the right knee up and reach the right knee off to the right, 90 degrees. And now straighten the leg and press the knee back, and then bring the knee down, the knee bends, and then bring the knee forward, touch the shoulder if you can, and then back. We're going to go around 3 times this direction. We're just making big circles with the knees. Try and keep both elbows straight. And after you've gone around 3 times one direction, just switch direction and go back the other way. As you do this, keep your attention on the hip and just notice what that feels like, both the joint as well as the muscles. And then when you've gone around 3 times each way, and bring that right knee down, and let's go to the second side. Pick the left knee up and then bring it forward and then down and back, and lift it up and forward and down and back. And one more time this direction, and then go back the other way, just like we did on the other side. Try and keep your awareness trained on that hip. Just notice what it feels like. Now when you're done, bring the left knee down. We've come back to table pose. Now tuck your toes and lift your hips into downward facing dog. And you can bend your knees if you want to. What I'd like you to do is lengthen the spine as much as you can, pressing the hands into the mat, reaching the tailbone towards the top of the wall behind you. Now keep that left foot on the mat and reach the right knee up and overhead, coming into a 3-legged dog pose. See if you can stack your right hip over your left hip. And one more breath. Try and relax that right foot. Now level the hips off, and then step the right foot forward so it comes between the hands. And now we're going to come down to lizard pose. So bring the left knee to the mat, untuck the toes on that left foot. And if you're able to now, come down to the elbows. You may want to heel toe that right foot over to the right a little bit. Now modifications. If you can't come all the way down to the elbows, feel free to use a prop for the elbows. A block is nice, or a rolled up blanket, or a pillow, a bolster, whatever you might have. If you don't have any of those things and you can't come all the way down to the elbows, just bend the elbows, keeping your hands on the mat, and come down as far as you're able to. Now, what I'd like for you to do is try and lengthen the whole body. Reach the head forward, point the toes, and maybe even scoot that left knee back a little bit. And now, hug the right knee in towards the right shoulder, and notice if that deepens the sensations you're feeling in the pose. One more breath. Awesome. Now walk back up onto the hands. Heel toe that right foot so it comes between the hands, and then tuck the toes and bring the left knee off the mat. We're back to runner's lunge. Now, 3-legged dog, second time. Lift that left hip up over the right hip. And now level the hips. And now pigeon pose. Bring the right knee to the right hand. Left hand, if you can, to the left foot. And then scoot that left knee back. And stay up in the pose for a moment, feeling the back bend. Modifications here. If you find that your left hip is up off the mat, you can always bring a prop below the right hip, or right glute. And as you lift that up, that'll allow that left hip to come down on this side. Let's find a couple more breaths. You can even walk the hands up onto the leg if you want. Deepening the back bend. And then when you're ready, slowly walk the hands forward into a resting pigeon pose, letting the forehead come down to the mat if you're able to. If this creates pain in that right knee, then bring the right heel towards the right pubic bone. That should take that pain out.
So ultimately what you're working towards is bringing the shin so it's parallel to the front of the mat, but your hip may or may not allow that motion or that posture, and modify accordingly. One more breath in our resting pigeon pose. Now slowly walk the hands back. Then tuck your toes and bring that left knee off the mat, and three-legged dog again, reaching that right leg up and overhead. Make sure your shoulders are square to the front of the mat. Maybe open up that hip a little bit more. And good work. Level the hips now. Bring that right leg down. On an inhale, reach the left leg high and find three-legged dog on our second side, on the left side. Opening the hips to the left. Relax that left foot as best you can. Now level the hips. And step the left foot forward so it comes between the hands. And then untuck the toes and bring the right knee to the mat. And lizard pose on our second side. Down to the elbows if you're able to. Remember to hug that left knee in towards the left shoulder. And for many of us, that really changes the way that pose feels in the hip. So another option is to just let that knee move out to the side. And you can explore that a little bit if you want. But I'd like you to come back to a place where you're hugging the knee in towards the shoulder. Lengthen the spine, reaching the top of the head forward. And now walk back up onto the hands. And heel toe that left foot between the hands. Untuck the toes and bring the right knee off the mat. Inhale, reach the left leg high. Three-legged dog. Opening the hips to the left. Now level the hips off. And find pigeon pose, bringing that left knee forward towards the left hand and the left foot towards the right hand. Again, if you want to, walk the hands back up onto the knee and the instep, deepening the back bend. Pull the right hip forward, left hip pulls back just a bit. And when you feel ready, move into resting pigeon pose. We're going to find 5 breaths now in resting pigeon. 3 more breaths. And 2 more breaths. And that's it. Walk the hands back towards your body. Then tuck the toes, bring the right knee off the mat, and then reach that left leg up and overhead as we come into our last three-legged dog. Remember to press the right heel towards the mat if you can. And work on stacking that left hip over the right hip on this side. And release. Back to downward dog. Lengthen the spine. Press the heels down towards the mat. 2 big, deep breaths here. And after the second exhale, glide forward to plank pose and then bring the knees to the mat back to table pose. Now let your hips drop to your heels. And then let the hips drop to one side and swing the legs around in front. Now we're going to find fire leg pose. For fire leg pose, bend the left knee and see if you can bring the shin of that left leg so that it's parallel to the front of your mat. And that left knee may press down all the way down to the mat, depending on how you're feeling. And then bend the right knee and bring the right foot to the top of the left knee and the right knee to the top of the left foot. So we're all squared up here. We've created a triangle if you look down in fire leg pose. And if you find that this knee is way up here, one option for you is to elevate your hips on a prop. So a block or maybe 2 or even 3 blocks or a pillow or something else. The hips can actually come up pretty high in this pose, maybe as much as almost a foot. And that'll help you bring the knees so that they're closer together and we can find this posture. Now take a deep breath. Now let's take a twist. Bring the left hand to the outside of the right knee, or the top of the right knee, and then twist and look over your right shoulder. Keep both sitting bones pressing down on the mat. So the left one has a little tendency to want to lift up. You can draw your navel in and pull the navel to the right now. Moving more deeply into the twist if you can do it without straining. And then let it go. Let's find the other side of fire leg pose. And now again, lengthen the spine once you're in the pose. And then take a twist to the left this time. Bring the palm of that right hand to the outside of the knee, or the top of the knee. And then twist and look over your left shoulder. Breathe in deeply. And now draw the navel to the left. Keep the spine long. And one more breath, lengthening on the inhale and twisting on the exhale. And then let it go. Bring it back to center. And come out of the pose just to a cross-legged posture. And now make your way to your back. So roll down to the back. And then once you're on your back, bring both feet to the mat. So the soles of the feet are pressing into the mat. Knees are bent about 90 degrees or so. Now, pick up the left foot and bring the left ankle to the right knee. We're going to do supine figure 4. Now, pick that right foot up off the mat and then interlace the fingers behind that right leg above the knee or below the knee if you feel really flexible in the hip. Now hug that right knee in, and using the strength of your leg, press the left knee away. It's important here to keep pressing the tailbone down, so you don't want to round too much in the pose. Now begin to notice where you're feeling that stretch. For most of you, it's going to be in the outer part of that left hip. And the more you can hug that left knee in and press the right knee away, the deeper sensation that you'll feel in that hip. And that's it. Let it go. Let's come over to the other side, bringing the right ankle to the left knee, interlacing the fingers behind that left leg. Now press the right knee away as you hug the left knee in. Remember to press your tailbone down towards the mat. And just take a few breaths to notice all the sensation that you feel in this pose, where you're feeling it, and notice what it feels like. I mean, it's easy to say it's a stretch, but what kind of stretch? How does the stretch feel? What is the precise nature of the sensation? And that's it. Let it go. And bring the soles of the feet back to the mat. For this one, what I'd like you to do is bring your feet to the edges of the mat. So heel toe the feet out to the edges of the mat. Then bring the arms out to a T to provide a little bit of stability. And then keep your feet on the mat, but let the knees travel to the left. And that left knee may land, the right knee probably won't. Now bring your gaze to the right. Keep pressing that right knee down towards the mat. And just notice what it feels like. Take a deep breath in, and when you exhale, try and surrender into the pose a little. Just let it go. And again, a deep breath in. And then exhale and move more deeply into the supine twist. And then release. Let your knees float back to center. And then to the other side. Let your gaze shift to the left now. And now the right knee, the outside of the right knee is probably on the mat or the floor. And for most of us, that left knee is going to be floating up a little bit. That's okay. But try and press the left knee down towards the mat just a bit. And look off to the left even a bit more. And take 2 more breaths, allowing yourself to surrender into the pose. And 1 more. Let the knees float back to center now.
And hug the knees into your body. And then bring yourself to a seat. Once you're seated, find a nice cross-legged position. You can bring the palms to the knees if you want. Take a deep breath. And then let the breath go. Do that again, but this time bring awareness to the hips as you exhale. Thank you so much for joining me for our hip-oriented practice today. Bring your hands to heart center if you like, and join me in offering loving kindness. May you be happy and well, and may you be safe. May you be peaceful, and may you be at ease. Namaste.